So this is what the relationship needs to be like with somebody who's helping you write your book.
Right.
Hey, it's Heather Chauvin, wife, mother of 3 boys, former social worker, breadwinner, recovering hustler, and stage 4 cancer survivor. I'm not a fan of that term, by the way. Beyond all of these titles and labels, I'm a human being, just like you, attempting to navigate it all while feeling good. My goal on this podcast is to show you that you can live an energized, sustainable life both at home and in your work. It doesn't matter if you stay at home full-time, if you work from home, you're a CEO, a successful business owner, or trying to find some inspiration. On this show, I attempt to keep it real with stories, interviews, and random thoughts. This is not a business or career podcast, and it's not a parenting podcast. It's both and so much more. You will laugh. You may even cry, and you may even get a little frustrated with the truth you've been hiding from yourself. I believe all human behavior is a language, whether it's through your child's behavior, your health, or a relationship. And when we learn to listen instead of react, we begin to understand what it truly means to feel alive and in control. It's time to put your big girl pants on and find your brave. Let's go.
Yes.
We just laugh a lot, and you call me out on my shit, and then I have the privilege of once in a while doing the same for you.
Yes.
Before we hit record, well, there's lots of things we could say, but I'm really excited to have this conversation. It has been a long road to get here, and I get a lot of questions from people asking me like how the book process is going, how the writing is, and that's a loaded question. And also, I just wanted to position it in a way where, you know, what would I have wanted to see or hear before I started writing? Because I think there's a lot of secrecy that happens. It's a creative process. And I was very upfront with you, or asked you, because you are a ghostwriter. And it took me a really long time to get to the point where I could accept and receive your help in this process, because I believed that I was a failure if I didn't do this by myself. And now being on the other side, realizing I would have been doing this book a huge disservice, because you've been, I was going to say midwife. And I know I'm not referencing the book as a baby. I'm not going to do that. But
one of my pet peeves.
I know, pet peeve. But I just think we'll get started. You have questions that you're going to ask me. I just think there's a lot of digging that we need to do, and creativity to pull it out. And this belief that women have that we can do all of this by ourselves is such bullshit.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we do so much as it is, right? So taking on something, you know, really realistically, the people I work with all have successful businesses like you. And it's a lot to take on to suddenly, oh gosh, I'm going to write a book. It's an enormous project. So I thought, I mean, we've talked before, you know, a while back, but I just thought I'd kind of quickly recap for people who are new to us talking, just our process. So let's see, I am a ghostwriter, obviously. We first started working together late 2018, and that was on the book proposal. Mm-hmm. So that took a few months, and, you know, that was kind of our first time, you know, not only me writing your book proposal, but also us really getting to know each other. And our working kind of creative collaboration taking shape. So I wanted to just kind of give you a chance to talk about what that was like for you, co-creating the book proposal together, Obviously, I did a lot of interviewing of you. I needed to know about your personal story. I needed to know about your business. I needed to know an awful lot about you. And we had really just met, which is, this is how these things happen, right? This is how I work with clients all the time. But I wanted to give you a chance to kind of just talk about what that was like for you, what it felt like.
Yeah. Okay. So you were a referral, right? So this is how the process went down. I made a declaration to myself that this desire and ache that would not go away, which was this book, was coming to the forefront, right? People call it a calling, whatever it is, that thing that just won't leave you alone. And I connected with someone that we both mutually know, and I was going through the book writing process with her. But there was always this voice at the back of my head that was like, when you're like, oh, I need this type of person to help me, or I need this specific strategy. The more you're doing creative personal development work on yourself, or if that's what you do in your business, you really get to know yourself of like, I need this, I need this, I need this. And as we were going down this rabbit hole of the book proposal, I always kept asking myself, what book am I writing? What book am I writing? And I didn't know, because I do not identify as a writer. Like the thought of waking up every day and getting my warm cup of coffee and coming down to my office and, just writing, just letting it out, even if it's shit, is extremely painful for me. I would rather stand on stage naked with a microphone and let, just be like, hey, who wants to point out my imperfections? That actually feels way more enjoyable to me than writing a book by myself in a dark office with children that I need to take care of. And so I realized very quickly that I need a writer. And I had so much shame around the term ghost writing, and somebody connected us. And I don't know what it was about you. I think because you have a healthy history of this, like you have actually written books for people, and you're not just someone who has a hobby of writing, like this is your whole career, like this is your genius, what you do. And you scared me a little bit. So I like that. You took a stand for my message, because when you and I first met, I was still, and I'm still working on it, and I can feel it. I have a message, but I don't want to be seen. I have a message that feels really big, but let's put the blinders on. Like, let's just hone it in the cave a little bit, because who are you to write this book, Heather? And that's a really strong belief that's been carrying throughout my life of who are you? Like, why do you matter? Why would people listen to me? And having our collaboration, there were a few times where you even said your primal brain is trying to take over right now, and you're running away from this. And I just broke down crying, not because you hurt my feelings, but because you took a stand for me the way that I take a stand for my clients. And I was waiting for somebody to show up for the book and me the way that I needed them to, so that I could have that breakthrough. And that's when I was like, oh shit, you're actually going to do this. Like that, be careful what you wish for. And I just wanted somebody to pull it out, let me just, help me organize my thoughts and my creative ideas and put them together. And then I realized I love collaborating. And if I knew that I was a collaborator as a child, my life would have been a lot easier. And so I think I found the sweet spot, but I had to work through a lot of mental resistance to know what I needed and how I was going to write this book, not how the world I'm supposed to write this book.
Yeah, exactly. And those are such normal issues. All authors really go through that. It's your visibility goes up, so the attention you're getting and calling forth gets overwhelming fast, and honestly, during the interviewing process, I so often hear authors talk about, feeling like they're not saying the right thing. You and I had several discussions about this, and feeling like even just in between with me and just a client, it's so often that it feels like, gosh, am I saying the right things? And I'm just looking for your answers. Like it's a completely open process. Right. And the idea is like, go ahead and spill, like just spill. But it is overwhelming, and that's completely common, and it's a real, it's interesting. The creative process in this case in particular, it's a growth process for both of us. Every book I do, is not just a creative exercise for me as a writer, but also just a personal development exercise, because first of all, I write in the personal development industry in health and wellness. So but every author brings something new, to me also. And every book really is a process for me as well of growth personally. And also for, my client. So it becomes it's like a journey we go on together, really, and then
pilgrimage.
Yeah, exactly.
Naked and afraid.
Yes, indeed. And, look, and the thing is, the book proposal, I remember as we were getting toward the end, speaking of being naked and afraid, I think it was like right around your birthday that it was being done, or maybe it was on your birthday.
You delivered it to me on my birthday.
Right. Okay.
But I was like, oh, great, this is my birthday present. You were like,
I was like, no.
Don't get your hopes up. Don't get your hopes up. And I was like, oh, why not? But it's true. You put so much expectation on something. You're like, just do the mundane. Like, it's just one little drop in the bucket. Like, Heather, your journey is so much longer. You just got the first mile done in a marathon. Right.
And I was like, don't get yourself a cake or something, because the book proposal it's just one leg of your journey. And the book journey is a long one. And people are often surprised of what it does entail from a time and energy standpoint. Even when you're working with a ghostwriter, because the reality is once you get the book proposal done, and book proposals these days, I mean, they range, but, definitely, 70 or so pages, some are longer, some are a little shorter, but they're not, 20-page documents. I mean, there's some definite work involved in getting them done. And once you get to that point, even if you already have an agent, which a lot of people don't, but if you do, then there's still a whole shopping process that has to happen of finding the right publisher. And sometimes that happens very quickly. Oftentimes that takes time. And so, that's why I kept saying, like, this is not your birthday present. Please celebrate outside of the book proposal, because, it's just one, it's a lovely marker, but it's just one marker in a longer journey, Mm-hmm. And so, when I wanted to give you a chance to talk then about, so we got the book proposal done, there it was, kind of on, so feeling real. I mean, that is a nice thing about the book proposal. Things start to feel real. Mm-hmm. But what was that like from that point forward, kind of the shopping process of getting it into the right hands?
So, yeah. My intention, okay, so everyone has different intentions. My personal intention of completing the proposal was for my own knowing of what book am I writing. And you don't necessarily have to have a proposal if you're self-publishing or hybrid publishing, but the traditional model wants a proposal. So in my mind, I wasn't for or against self or traditional. I thought, and I've talked to both sides, and everyone has their own opinion. So I got to a point where I was like, guess what? This is going to be a gut instinct, Heather. This is not like 100% you need to do this, 100% you need to do that. So I did speak with an agent. I spoke to multiple agents, And I had the opportunity to potentially go around the traditional route. But my gut instinct was telling me not for book number one. And the reason for me personally is this whole book and message and what I've done in my life and what I want to become is the embodiment of living on my own terms. And what that means is if I want to dye my hair purple, I'm going to dye my hair purple. I'm not changing my hair color because that doesn't look good for my image. Or I'm not going to change my hair color because I'm in a contract with somebody who won't allow me to change my hair color. And I felt like the traditional route, there was this desire within me to birth something. And then there's this, what the market wants, needs, all of that. And some of the feedback I was receiving was, well, we need to change this. We need to change this. It needs to be called this. And my gut just kept going, nope, 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 nope. Okay, I've made my decision. So it's not that one day I'm not going to traditionally write a book. They may pick up this book later. Who knows? I'm not attached to the future. But I decided to do the middle ground, which is considered like a hybrid version. I really wanted people to hold the book and feel like they purchased it out of a bookstore, which the way that I'm doing it, you actually still can purchase in a bookstore. I don't think they will be right away, but I want them to feel like it's high quality. And also it is a book that you can read over again and again and again. And it's not a Bible on how to live your best life. Like step 1, do this. Step 2, I wanted to tell my story, but in a way that was a teachable, had a little bit of action and strategy, but you could read this before you go to bed and feel like a good person, not that you're failing at life. I wanted people to know like they're not alone. It's almost like, a best friend is telling a story, you're having a cup of coffee together, and you are learning about yourself through the stories and eyes of somebody else. And so it took a really long time to figure out which route to go. And ultimately, I had to trust my gut, right? Like you gave me feedback, other professionals gave me feedback, and then I would change like directions. And then all of a sudden I would get different advice and feedback. And I was like, okay, so whatever lens I have on, whether I'm for something or against it, I could literally get somebody for or against any side of the debate that I'm going with right now. And I had to make that vulnerable decision to ultimately, make a choice that was in alignment with the book that I want to put out into the world, and which cost me a lot more money too. But that's okay. It'll pay off in the long run.
Right.
We're taking donations, by the way. You can send money via PayPal. I can't do Venmo because I'm Canadian. And I have no idea what this is. My husband just dropped it off. I'm hoping it's healthy. I think it's beet juice.
It's really pretty.
It smells disgusting, so it must be healthy.
Okay. And I wanted to kind of talk about that from a couple different angles. So just to be clear for everyone who's watching and maybe isn't as familiar with publishing, hybrid publishing is, essentially nuts and bolts. It's a form of self-publishing that's got some elements of traditional publishing in it, but the author is responsible for the whole writing and editing, process much more so than traditional. And so, and just, for people who are curious, it's pretty common. I have so many clients who have come up with book proposals. They send them out. There's interest. However, the interest comes back like, we're interested, but how about this idea? We feel like this has promise, but we don't think, the way it is. And essentially, it's kind of like a little bit of feedback, but essentially it's a whole different kind of book, which is the feedback you got. That's extremely common. That happens all the time. I have so many clients who have had that experience. And it's a tough call because there are times when it's the way to go. Okay, I really am dedicated to traditional publishing. I love my agent. This seems like a good publisher. It seems like the right situation. Okay, I'll do this book they want first. There are other times, and I've had other clients like you who decided, you know what, this doesn't work for me. This is not the first book I want to write. And some of them hold out for a different publisher and agent who will sell that idea and accept it. Others, choose to some form of self-publishing. So that's a very common scenario that happens. And then I also wanted to get into kind of a little more of the personal side of your decision, if that's all right, because it's just an incredible story.
I have no idea. You're like, this is what I'm going to ask you. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but I feel like you know me better than I know myself sometimes. Go ahead.
Because, it was just a really sweet and just important story.
Oh, yes, I know.
I also got choked up when you sent me. I think it was a boxer. I don't remember what you sent me, but when you told me. And so there was there was a specific personal reason why not only did you want this to be your first book, but you wanted this to come out now. I mean, not now, but within the next year. And if you want to just talk a little bit about that.
I'll let you, and then I'll add to it. I know what you're talking about now. Go for it.
Yeah. So it was your grandmother.
I chose. I decided after she passed, right?
Yeah. And it was right around when she was. You're going to have to tell
the story because I'm going to start crying.
So I don't remember every single detail, but we talked, and she was not doing well. And she'd been an important, female figure in your life for, forever, for a very, very long time. And very strong woman who, as I recall, also had started her own business. Is that true? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, her and my grandfather started like a family business, and a strong woman, but not a strong energy. Like the passively strong. What would you call that? She doesn't have the same personality as me. Let's just put it that way. She's not the alpha type. It's like, I'm strong. I know my beliefs, but I don't need to be the center of attention.
Right. Mm-hmm. So a strong introvert, maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and she had always regretted not telling her story. And had always wanted to, as I recall. Am I getting it right?
Yeah. So I'll just say it because you're like feeding me to tell me. You're like, say it. Okay. So my grandmother, was this October, maybe, when she passed-ish, or early November?
Fall-ish, yeah.
Okay. And so my grandmother was a mother of 3 boys. I'm a mother of 3 boys. And when she was in her early 30s, I believe, or 30-ish, she had cancer. And they did not expect her to live back then. And they didn't even have chemo or radiation. I think they had chemo, but they didn't have radiation back then. So they used a cobalt treatment. And a lot of modern physicians don't even know what that is, because it's, it killed people. And she survived it. She lived till she was like 86-ish. I think she was 86. And she actually died very peacefully. She fell or something and went into the hospital. And they were like, "You're dying. Like, we have to transfer you to hospice." She was like, "What? Like, I just fell. Like, I feel fine. I'm okay." And I was just like, man, what a beautiful way to go. Like, you're not suffering. It's just your time. And she was so peaceful. So this is where I'm going to cry. The last time I went to go visit her in the hospital, she was still very with it. And I went by myself, and she made a comment. Like, of course, she's like, "I'm proud of you, blah, blah, blah." And then she said, "I really wish I would have told my story. I wrote it down a few times, but I just couldn't get it all out. And then it just hit me, and I was like, why am I letting fear or the judgment of others or perfection get in the way of getting this book out into the world, right? Like the indecision of sitting on the fence and waiting to be perfect for other people, or waiting to, like so many things that get in our way, right? I felt like the book came to like a standstill, and the fate was in the hands of somebody else. And then I had to manipulate the story to meet their expectations. And I just thought, okay, it's time. So yeah, at the time, I think I was in contact with a self-publisher that I really respected. And I just executed after that. I was like, this one is going to be told my way. And I can't talk about that anymore because now I'm going to cry.
Thank you for sharing that.
You always make me do this. You always make me cry. Like, damn it, Wyndham, you did it again.
Oh. And I think one of the things I wanted to we've kind of been tapped in, talking a little bit about, but not really addressing directly, is just the importance of flexibility in the creative process and the book writing process. It's so often, something that people have dreamt about doing for a long time. And I think it's a really important dream to honor for any number of reasons, personally, also, business, there are all kinds of reasons. But, I think for a lot of people, it's a very personal and important journey that they, have thought about for a very long time. In that process, they kind of make a lot of decisions, as we all do when we are focused on realizing some kind of important dream. But then you get to it, and there are all these decisions that suddenly don't seem so clear, and situations that you didn't anticipate in your mind. And it can be a little overwhelming. Suddenly this big dream you had it all set. You were going to write this book and this way, and it was going to happen, And I think, what often happens is, like I said, they end up being called to be a lot more flexible and kind of step back and take a look at, because, realistically, publishing is an industry. It's a business. And so there are other priorities that have to come into play. And it's hard because it's a very personal journey and a very personal dream that a lot of people have. But I think also there's a real beauty in the flexibility of creativity. And I think it's been very apparent in our process because in addition to you kind of having this beautiful story, inspiring story of why you wanted this to be your first book, that also made me cry when you first told me. As we've kind of, we spent months and weeks and doing all this talking and interviewing to get the book proposal done. And as often happens, then you get to the book writing stage, even after going through all this, like agent or not, and publishers or not, or which publisher, all these decisions and these changes that have had to be made in that process. And then you get to the book writing process and find that oftentimes that parts or of the book kind of end up taking a little bit of different form and shape and
you realize I'm a feminist. That's what you're trying to say.
I knew you're a feminist. You never called yourself a feminist.
I never said it.
No, you never.
You know who Dr. Ruth is, right? Okay, so I was watching her documentary, and her grandchildren are like, "You're a feminist, Grandma," and she would say, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Don't call me that." And they're like, "But you are all for women's rights and you're all for, women's choice, like pro-choice and all of that. And you buy me hats that say feminist on it, but you will never wear the feminist hat." And it was just so interesting to me because I was like, oh my gosh,
I don't know why I don't like calling myself a feminist. I thought it's equal rights. Maybe it's because I advocate for men and women and all abilities. And it was just, which is feminism, but it was interesting to me that, yeah, what the book that you think you're going to write or the story that you want to tell takes you down, I was going to say a rabbit hole, but it's not a scary rabbit hole. It's a beautiful rabbit hole of what is, the bigger story and the bigger message. And I personally don't feel like I would have been able to get that out without your help and guidance. Sometimes when you're interviewing me, I always say, this is, more healing than this is like years of therapy, like on steroids, because you'll be like, make these connections. I'm like, you did it again, Wyndham. But you see yourself clear, like you see it in a different light and a different perspective. And I remember, I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert said once, like, you have to write the book for yourself. Like, you can't write it for anybody else, because as soon as you step out of that, oh man, expectation is going to step in. And so far I've been doing this to heal myself first, and then hopefully heal others by doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important, and that's another topic we can talk about another time, but there's a lot of talk sometimes about like, what do people want? And, which is an important marketing question to ask in a lot of cases. When it comes to writing a book, it's a bit of a slippery slope. It's not that you can go write any old book, because it does need to sell. That's really important, obviously. But like I said, that's probably a topic we can take on another time. But yeah, I mean, it is a very personal process, and it is important, especially with the first book, I would say, to write a book that feels like the book you want to write. And
Okay, so you got frozen there for a second, but we recuperated. And then while you were talking, I was thinking I didn't even answer your question, which was the importance of flexibility. And I think during this time, obviously having the conversation with myself that now my phone's talking to me. Oh my God, this is a beautiful day. There we go. So how flexibility is so important, but I also see how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you're not flexible in your life, you're definitely not going to be, you can't control the creative process. That is the whole point. You're supposed to allow it to flow. And I think this process has allowed me to relinquish control in other areas of my life. I just have to be committed to chronically showing up, like doing the work, leaning in, and then seeing what shows up. And then whatever shows up, dealing with that. And, you have to have your plan. You have to take action on your plan. But at any point, most likely, you will set fire to the plan and you may have to create a new one.
Yeah, absolutely. And which doesn't mean the work you've done before, like our book proposal is still very useful. It's just not exactly the book we're writing, and that's incredibly normal.
And I don't think we would have the clarity or path that we do now if we didn't go through the book writing or proposal process. Like that was like layer number one, right? It's like you're chronically just pulling back the layers to know what direction you're headed in.
So I think that's kind of all we've covered for today. And I think our plan is to continue. We're about halfway through the book at this point. And so we've got some weeks left for sure. And our plan is to kind of keep keep doing this to share with your readers, your future readers, your followers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what it's like, the collaboration process, you know. So this has been kind of an overview, and we'll be back some point soon
Yeah,
to talk about
I think
more.
we'll do it every now and again. And if anyone's watching this video, you can post below the video or send me a DM on Instagram of, you know, questions that you have around the book. What do you want to know? And we can kind of compile those questions for the next time. And Wyndham, I'm going to tag you underneath this video on Instagram so people can start following you, because you are a new, I always make you say it, New York Times best-selling ghostwriter.
Yes.
Which means you've written books that have made it to the New York Times best-selling list, bestsellers, whatever the heck it's called, list. And yeah. And then if you're listening to this on the podcast and you have questions, you can actually send them to podcast@heatherchauvin.com. My last name is spelled Chauvin. So podcast@heatherchauvin.com. And then in the subject line, just put book question. I would love to get this conversation going because I think this is definitely something bigger than me. I'm just the catalyst for one story for women, but there's many more that need to be told.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Wyndham.
Thank you.